Hi, my name is Suzanne Estrella, and I'm the Commonwealth Victim Advocate. Welcome to our monthly Monday night meetup. This is a space where we hope to empower crime survivors, share information, and just provide a space for judgment-free space for honest conversation and thoughtful reflection. This month is April, and we are honoring Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I do want to say that this is being recorded, so there is no expectation of privacy or confidentiality. It's also airing through our Facebook Live and will later be posted to our YouTube channel so that people can watch at their own convenience. But I hope that you will take some time to join this conversation with us tonight. If you have some questions, you can type them in the chat box, and we will try to get to those as we can. Like I said, we are honoring Sexual Assault Awareness Month, the month of April, and I have some guests with me tonight who are from various rape crisis centers throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I'm going to take a moment and ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about who they are, what they do, how long they've been doing it, and maybe what counties their particular center provides services in. So we'll start with Allie, and then we'll pass that along.
Great. Good evening, Suzanne, and a huge thank you to the Office of the Victim Advocate for inviting SARCC and all our sister sexual assault programs to share a little bit of information about some of the work that we do in our communities. I'm the CEO of the Sexual Assault Resource and Counseling Center, and we're a sexual assault program that serves Lebanon and Schuylkill counties in Pennsylvania. So we kind of span the central Pennsylvania area up to the bottom corner of Northeast PA. Both of our offices are located in each of the counties that we serve. So we've got 2 offices, and each office is fully staffed to support the survivors in each of our communities. This includes advocates who are on site anytime our office is open to meet with someone. We also have prevention educators who work in each of our counties and do a lot of work to try to build skills in our communities, both for children and for adults, to prevent the first-time perpetration of sexual assault and sexual abuse. And then we've recently added therapy to the components of what we do. So we've got trauma therapists in each of our offices who are trained in evidence-based treatment modalities that help to reduce the impacts of trauma that sexual violence survivors and their friends and family members can experience in the aftermath of a sexual assault.
Thanks for joining us. Let's see, next on my screen, I'm going to go to Jacardi.
Hello, and thank you again, Suzanne and the Office of the Victim Advocate for having us here to talk about what we do. So I am Jacardi Jean-Baptiste. I am the counseling director of the at the YWCA York. And so I oversee the counseling department. We provide trauma-informed counseling to all victims of crimes, particularly sexual assault victims and survivors. We also have legal advocates and also a community education department. And the hotline is always on to provide crisis counseling and help and support to all the victims that will call us and need counseling. So I've been doing this since 2012.
Thank you so much. Erin?
Good evening. Thank you so much, Suzanne and OVA, for having me on this panel. It's so important. I'm coming from Victim Services Center in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And we are a rape crisis center. We're also comprehensive. So for us, that just means we serve other types of serious or violent crimes. And much like Ali and Gerardi, we are doing prevention education, advocacy, and counseling and therapy. I'm the direct services supervisor there. I've been there since 2008 and just love the mission and really love offering healing and support, but also prevention is key. And so I'm so glad we're here to talk about Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Great. So clearly we have a panel of experts here. So I think it's important, which it kind of just dawned on me, that we should say what we mean when we say sexual assault. That we should make that clear to our audience, because I know sometimes people are victimized and then they think because it wasn't this or that, or because no one was charged, that maybe they were not sexually assaulted. So would any of you like to offer up a definition for us of what is sexual assault?
I can do that, Suzanne. So I was just talking about this today, and you're right. It is so important that we do really talk about that and define it. I would say, and I think this is true for all of the rape crisis centers and services in Pennsylvania, that we don't look exclusively at sexual assault or sexual abuse. We really look at sexual violence as a whole. And we understand that as sort of an umbrella term that covers any act or behavior of a sexual nature that happens without a person's consent. So sometimes when people call our centers, they might think, oh, like I haven't reported this, or I don't think this is something that I want to go through the court process for. But I think what's really important to remember is that people who've experienced sexual violence of any type have a right to access support and services at sexual assault programs in Pennsylvania. And it doesn't depend on whether you report the crime or not. You can get that support no matter what. And there's not sort of a level you have to reach of types of assault or types of behavior that had to have happened to you for you to experience trauma in the aftermath of it, or to just want to talk with someone about your healing and about how that works.
Great, thank you. I think that's so important. Okay, Erin, I think I'll start with you on this next question. Tell us about the sexual assault awareness campaign that's happening there at your center.
Yeah, sure. So I think about 10 years ago, End Violence Against Women International started and launched a Start by Believing campaign, which really, I think, is designed to increase awareness about sexual assault and sexual abuse, but also to really improve the way that society responds. And so, especially when a survivor discloses, it's incredibly scary. A lot of times shame is involved. And so this campaign, the hope with launching this campaign, which we've done several years, but we're doing again this year, is really to respond to disclosures with the initial belief rather than kind of initial doubt or blame. And so our agency is really encouraging our community allies, community members to take that pledge. It can be found, Start by Believing, but also on our website. And you think, what can signing a pledge and posting that really mean? And I think for survivors that have faced self-blame and media's messages often, I think that if they see their community responding in a way that says, hey, I'm going to start by just believing and offering a safe space, we find that's incredibly helpful. And that's a first step that anyone can take. So we're certainly doing that. We're hosting a number of free virtual events, 2 yoga classes, 2 studios in our community are offering classes for survivors, but also community members, just to kind of be together and practice some kind of self-care for the body. We're really active in social media, but I will say some of the programs that we're doing, the events, we had a medical perspective virtual event today. We have consent for all ages coming up, I think, next week. One for Understanding Power, Why Women of Color Are at Higher Risk of Sexual Abuse. That's on April 12th. We have one focusing on male survivors. So we're trying to get out there in ways that people can access no matter where they are. So it's not a barrier. So we love in person, but we're kind of in this weird space, like probably many other centers. So those are kind of some of the things that we're doing for the month.
Great. It's you mentioned the Start by Believing campaign. I had an opportunity one year when I was working at PCAR to attend that national conference, and someone showed a video clip kind of just to bring that to life for us. And it was a video, it was a whole acting thing, but they were pretending like the person had reported that they had been robbed, but the police officer was acting like they would act if it was sexual assault. So the person saying that they got robbed and they're saying, are you sure you were really robbed? Did you just let them borrow your computer and stuff like that? And it was just such an eye opener. And we thought about, oh yeah, this is the only time where this happens. If somebody reports something else, then they are automatically start by believing, but it's just so just the way it was such an eye opener.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they do that. And I think there's like so much more that's being done now to get people to really question, like, why as a society are we doing that in only this case? And you know, how can we change that? And I think these campaigns like this that happen annually causes us to stop, reflect, think about what we're doing and what we can do better. So yeah, that's great. Jacardi, what are you guys having happening this month for your sexual assault awareness campaign?
Sure. So over in York County, we are we're just going along with the campaign this year, which is on tech safety. I mean, providing an online safe spaces. So for example, we have tech safety online training that is taking place soon during the month of April. We also have Teal Tuesday, which is tomorrow, and we are also, I'm sorry, there's so much going on that I have to keep, I've kept the list and I'm reading off of it. We have a crime victims right rally happening on April 25th. We have the march, the Crime Victims' Rights Vigil and March going on April 26th. And on April 27th, it's Denim Day. And that is going off of the Denim Day campaign. And so we have that going on April 27th. So we've also written an op-ed just to you know, bring awareness to the fact that, you know, this is also happening online. So that I don't think that's something that we've, like the community or society ever paid attention to, that when you're online, sexual harassment, abuse, anything without your consent, this type of things can happen online as well. So so we're providing that training to talk about tech safety, but we're also trying to bring awareness and education to the fact, you know, how do you keep yourself safe online, and that this is happening as well online. So, and what to do about it. So
great, sounds great. Hallie, how about you all? What are you guys doing?
So I think really similar to what Erin and Jacardi talked about, I think a lot of our efforts are a blend of online and usually outdoor in-person events. We are in very much that like middle ground of coming out of COVID and having communities who really want to get together and be in space with one another. And at the same time, we want to take appropriate precautions. We are doing a 30 days of SAAM social media campaign. One of the things that we've really found is still true in the communities that we serve is there's a lot of misinformation about sexual assault and sexual violence and healing from those types of victimization. And so we're trying to share a fact about sexual assaults, the origins of sexual assault each day during the month of April, so that our community really does understand some of the basics and foundational things related to responding to sexual assault or to survivors. Those facts, we've just started posting our first 7 days this week, and they range everywhere from, you know, what is sexual assault, and giving that same kind of definition that we shared with you at the start of this discussion, to what is consent, and helping our community to understand consent, since it's such a pivotal part of understanding sexual violence and victimization. And then we're stemming off to talk about ways that particular communities are impacted by sexual assault and sexual harassment. So I'm talking about the higher rates of sexual violence victimization among LGBTQ plus IA communities, and ways that they're the experiences or identities in those communities can be a barrier to disclosing sexual abuse or getting support in the aftermath of it. One of the things that we keep finding is that there's so much to do in so many different realms and spaces. So we've got, campuses in both of our communities that are, college students who have these fantastic and amazing ideas and are also in a time of life that is extremely high risk for sexual violence and intimate partner violence as well. And I think we want to do our best to highlight the voices and experiences of the different pockets of our community as the month goes on. We also, in our county, in Lebanon County, we have an installation of the PA National Guard at Fort Indian Town Gap. We do a lot in conjunction with the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office out of Fort Indian Town Gap. And one of the great in-person events that we have coming up at the end of the month will take place in Schuylkill County, and it's a Sexual Assault Awareness Month Family Fun Run and 5K event. So it's done in conjunction and in collaboration with the office out at the Gap, and it serves military families as well as the community at large with education and information on sexual assaults and kind of getting, all the wonderful things that go along with family connections and support and finding ways to be outside and enjoy time with one another and educating on sexual assault and awareness at the same time. So that's one event that we're really excited about. And we are, for the first time this year since COVID started, proud to partner with some student activists in one of our communities to host a Survivor Speak Out event that's taking place at the end of the week this week in one of our public parks. And we haven't had the chance or opportunity to do this since 2019. So I'm so excited about this opportunity to partner, and that it is inspired by and in large part run by student activists, which is just a fantastic and exciting thing to see happen. And I'm reminded each day that we work through this process, how important it is that the voices and experiences of survivors and their needs are centered, and you really strive to understand it, because oftentimes each part of a system thinks they're doing the best they can or the right thing to serve a survivor of sexual violence. And in looking at just like the one small part of responding to their experience, you miss that big picture and the holistic response, or how little messages that we give to survivors can unintentionally send the message that they're not believed, that they're questioned. And so I'm taking notes on Erin's Start by Believing campaign initiatives, because, I think that's a great action step for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Like, first understand that this is real, and then understand what you can do about it in that moment that none of us want to be in, but it's so important to be there and be fully present when we are there for a disclosure of sexual assault.
Wow. Yeah, well said. It's collaboration is so important, that we each bring something to the table, but being able to value that other piece to get that big picture. Yeah, that's super important. And you got all three of you guys are just providing such a vast array of resources and opportunities for the community. I think that's really powerful and impactful. I understand I also had the opportunity to meet earlier this month with Jim Wilshire from the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, and that interview is up on our YouTube channel. But I understand that the campaign in itself, the national campaign, really has to do with kind of technology and safety around sexual assault through technology. Have you all had a lot of survivors or people calling in for services with those particular issues around like cyberbullying or cyber stalking or sexual assault through some type of social media platform or something like that?
I mean, I can go ahead and say that I'm not aware of a lot of calls coming in about that, but I have to say that when it comes to our teens, what they experience in school, It also is carried through, like their online, communication with other teens. So some of that bullying happens there, but to say that calls are coming in specifically about that, not that I'm aware of, but definitely I think that our teens are impacted by this. So it's happening in school, and then when they are online, so if they're being bullied at school, that is also happening through social media and whatnot when they're at home. So I've heard a couple of stories about that, but not necessarily specific calls. So that is something that I would like to go back and just filter and see, how many of our calls are specific to being unsafe online.
Since you mentioned teens, that's a great segue. Tell me about what services you all provide for teenagers. Like, could a 15-year-old person like call the center and get help, or do they have to have their parent? What's available for teenagers?
Sure, I'll stay on and keep on talking. Yeah, so when our teenagers come through, they can expect individual counseling being provided to them at no cost, and that those services are confidential to them. So it's not necessary that a teenager would need parental consent for those type of services. And what I mean by that, it's starting at the age of, I want to say 13 or 14, if I'm remembering our policies correctly. So they can sign their own paperwork, and services would take place with them. They can complete their own intake as well. And if we should ever need to speak to a parent, we do that with their permission. They would sign a release form just like an adult would. And if there's something that needs to be shared with the parent or anyone else, really, we go through that process with them. So they can call our hotline at any time. And we are in the process of just revamping our support groups for our teens. That is something that kind of took a pause during the pandemic, but we are in the process of just looking at how can we start up again with our support group for teens. Another way that we provide services and support is through our collaboration with Leg Up Farm. Leg Up Farm provides equine assisted therapy in York County, and so during the summer month, children and teens get to participate in that. So it's at no cost to them. A bus comes, picks them up at our center and takes them up there with the counselors, and they spend a couple of hours just getting just equine assisted therapy. And for a lot of our children and teens, that is something that they have never experienced before. Some of them with some children or teen do decide to continue to receive that service on their own with their parents, so they can sign up with Leg Up Farm that way. But during the summer month, we make sure that our children and our teens get to participate in that. Yeah, individual counseling support group for teens. That's our main. These are our main services for teenagers.
Right. Erin, how about you guys?
I'll echo exactly the same. We're doing the same type of therapy and treatment. Children over 14 for us can consent for treatment themselves. And we see kids at our center as young as 5 in our child abuse treatment program. We also provide advocacy services for any children. And I wanted to highlight, probably much like the other centers, there's a big, our educators are in the community almost daily. Thank God that they're kind of being welcomed back in person in schools, because we know that's like the way that we prefer, certainly, to provide our prevention education. But they do lots of work around bystander intervention, consent. What is that? healthy sexuality. They have a safety rangers after school program for an array of safety skills, from fire safety to internet safety to, sexual abuse and identifying who is a safe support. And so we are offering the services for teens in direct service, but also really finding that prevention is possible, is key. And we're trying to do that through our wonderful educators that are out there every day.
Great. Allie?
Yeah, so everything that Erin and Jacardi shared is true at SARCC as well. So any of our services, whether it's support groups, individual counseling, therapy, hotline, all of that is available to any survivor or supporting family member or friend of any age. We often find that people, younger folks, they care so much about their friends. And sometimes people who've experienced sexual assault, they'll talk to their friends first. And so it's not unusual to get calls to our hotline or a friend of a teen survivor who's calling in just to try to get guidance and get information about what they can do to help to support that person. One thing that I'll share that I don't think the other folks touched on, though I know it'll be true at any center, is that sexual assault counselors or anyone working at a sexual assault program are considered mandated reporters under the law. And so we try to be really clear and upfront, especially with the young people that we work with, what that means and how that works for them as they navigate and make choices for their safety and healing. A sexual assault survivor, sexual abuse survivor, what they experienced is something that they didn't choose. No one ever chooses sexual assault, but what they can choose is how they heal from it and how they get help after it. And so if we're clear and upfront about our role and responsibility as mandated reporters, we can use that information to help teens or even younger folks make informed choices about what to share, when to share, how to share it, and how talking with a supporting and trusted adult can help them to find and navigate a way to safe space for healing. In sharing that information, being really upfront about that, I've found, and I think a lot of our counselors would say too, they have some really great conversations with young people about what that means and about who has access to their information or to what they talk about. And so we want to make sure when we're talking with folks about mandated reporting or even our role in maintaining confidentiality for survivors, that we do everything that we can to make sure that they understand who we're going to tell if we have to tell someone that there's abuse that is suspected going on, and what we can't tell or what we won't talk to other folks about. So what they review or talk about in their counseling sessions or in their therapy sessions, there's no requirement that your counselor or therapist walks out into the waiting room and tells the person who brought you to counseling what that discussion was all about. It's all it's in an effort to help preserve and maintain that confidentiality and that informed decision making. And sometimes, especially teen survivors, are working through some really difficult and challenging times, and it may help to have that sounding board and that safe person to bounce ideas off of, to practice talking to an adult about what happened to you or what you're struggling with someone who hears about it every day and works with other survivors who are going through it. And it can help folks to have that sounding board and make informed choices about who they want to tell, how they want to get help, and how they build the support system around them in the process.
Wow, those are great points. I'm sure that young people are happy to hear that even if you have to, as a mandated reporter, that doesn't mean that you have to tell everything they say. So yeah, that's so different than what you might think just initially hearing that. So let's transition just a little bit and tell me what it would be like for a victim survivor who calls the first time. You know, they get up their courage, they call that hotline number, and then what can they expect after they make that call? Jacardi, you want to start?
Sure. So you get the courage and you make that call. And so we're going to thank you for that. And then we are going to let you know about who we are, that this call is confidential. And we're going to make sure that you are safe. That these are the first couple of things that are going to take place when you call. And then we are going to listen. We are going to listen without judgment, without interruption, just to get a sense of what it is that you need, because we don't want to assume about your needs. So we are going to listen, and then we are going to provide some guidance to help you make your own decision about what you want to do next, the next step. What is that going to look like? Is it that you would like to go to the hospital? While we might encourage this for your safety and for your physical safety and well-being, you might not want to do that. And so we're going to provide some education. We are going to, just provide you some education so that you can make that informed decision for yourself. If you do decide to go to the hospital, there's accompaniment. We can meet you there. An advocate, a trained advocate will meet you there and accompany you through that process. And if that's not what you need, if you're looking for legal services, if you would like to know what's going to happen, do I report, do I not? So we are really going to listen and do maybe some, pros and cons, what will reporting and not reporting, what will that look like? And we do also provide accompaniment to the police station. And if it's counseling that you need, we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to provide you some information, what's going to be the first step, so that you know what to expect, so that you can make your own decision. Again, we're not going to assume what you need. We're not going to tell you what to do and not to do. We're just going to walk with you through whatever step you decide to take. So at first, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm sure Ali and Erin will add to that, and then my wheel will start spinning. So if I need to come back, I'll jump in. But I can say for sure that we're gonna make sure that it is a safe phone call, that you're safe. We're going to listen and just guide you through making some decisions for yourself.
Okay. Ali?
One of the beautiful things about sexual assault advocates in Pennsylvania is the consistency and the excellent service that I see Erin doing the same thing. Like Jacardi said, all of the wonderful things and great things that we teach when we teach our advocates about answering hotline calls, listening, providing support, letting the person know that they are believed and that they have options and choices and ways to move forward and get support. A lot of times in the course of just listening and connecting and believing, we're able to gather some general information about, when did this take place and what resources or support options might be available to survivors based on when this happened. And it's not necessary that this is something that happened recently. Sexual assault survivors can call a hotline, can get support, whether this is something that happened today or something that happened decades ago. Sometimes survivors experience moments of crisis or things bubble up or something happens in their everyday life that brings them back to that place when they first experienced the victimization. And it's okay to reach out and to get help. It's the expectation and not the exception that people will sometimes wait to disclose sexual abuse or to get help from it. And that's okay. When you decide that it's time and you're ready, there's an advocate who's available in your community to answer the call, to listen, and to provide that support that Jacardi was talking about.
Great. Erin, you want to add something?
I mean, not much to add. Those were like beautiful, perfect responses. I think the one thing maybe just to kind of highlight again is there's such an importance, I think, for giving information. It sounds so simple, but I think so many times people are calling probably all of our centers in crisis or maybe just having no idea of what's available, what are options. And so there's such power to just giving information and option. And much like Jacardi said, it's like, our goal is not to offer advice or suggestion. It's really, here's the options and what's the safest for you. How can we help you in whatever way we can? So I echo definitely what Ali said. It's like so amazing to hear. Just it's like the same in you know, across all these centers in PA. So
That's good. It's kind of rare that you find that from county to county that people are saying that the service is going to be identical. So that's great. You guys should definitely be proud of that. And then you mentioned about giving information. I think that's important. A point that we need to almost like stop and sit with the fact that the person is in crisis. So it may be the need to give that information again and again and again. They hear it from you, they hear it from someone else. I don't know if you've read that book, Know My Name, about the young woman who was raped by at a party near the college, was the athlete. And she talks in there about how, you know, whether it was attorneys, advocates were telling her all this information of what she should do or what was going to happen. And she was saying, yes, yes, yes. And she'd go home and she was like, she didn't understand anything they were talking about, but assumed that, oh, she was supposed to understand. And I just made me think as an advocate and a victim service provider that sometimes you forget that we're trying to convey so much information at a time when the person just is really not equipped to receive all that information, and finding ways where we can make that palatable and be ready to give it again and again is really, it's very important. Yeah.
And one other thing too that just came to mind, Suzanne, as you were saying, I think the importance of also that there's victim rights, that victims and survivors, they have rights, and these are what they are. And many times you keep going back and back because trauma clouds memory and makes sometimes it hard to understand. And so information options, but also these are the rights that you're entitled to, and how can we support you and make sure, you know, you're always treated with dignity.
Right. And even like, I think Ali mentioned earlier, like the misinformation and myths that people sit with. I did a training once that for athletes, it was required. They had to have sexual assault training for the athletes. And they asked me to go to one of the smaller colleges, and I went and I was reading some actual scenarios from actual cases about where people had charged. And then I was asking them to guess, did this person get convicted or not convicted? And they like never thought anybody was getting convicted. And I'm like, yeah, that's against the law. You can't do that to people. And if you don't ask, you cannot assume because this didn't happen or that didn't happen, or, oh, I know she wanted it. This like that, these are all myths and untruths, and really helping people to get past that it's kind of like you think it's supposed to be common sense that everybody knows. Like nobody walks up and just takes somebody's cell phone, but it's just for some reason, somehow now we don't have that common sense piece in when it comes to sexual safety and your body and your right to decide what happens to your own body. So yeah, lots of work to do. And I'm glad you guys are at the forefront of doing the work, and that this awareness campaign is going forth in so many different arenas. I think that's part of what makes it so impactful. Let's see. Tell me about what services or what you're doing in minority or marginalized communities. I know we've heard in the past where people say that that these rape crisis centers have not been meeting the needs of minority groups and things of that nature. Tell me what's been done at your center to kind of get beyond that and create something new. Let's see, want to start with Ali?
Sure. So we have had a lot of learning in our center and in our communities over the last couple of years. Our organization was privileged enough to work in conjunction with PCAR to have consultants from the Women of Color Network because of some of those things that you were speaking about, Suzanne. Rape crisis centers and programs many of us were founded back in the early to mid 80s. And often it was something that grew out of mainstream women's movements. And unfortunately, in the process of doing that, so wonderful and amazing things happen. We established services for survivors, we built organizations, and at the same time, it often led to centering the voices and experiences of especially white women and adult white women. And it took some really intentional learning and learning that continues to know and understand and absorb some of that history and problematic history in our centers and programs, and to help to build a better understanding about how best to overcome that history and to build an anti-racist capacity as an organization. So we've really found a lot of value in taking a 360-degree look at our organization from top to bottom. And we were really guided through that process by amazing advocates and women of color from the Women of Color Network. So we took a hard look at our board, at our staff, at our leadership, at our volunteer pool, at who we were serving, at who was actually in our community. And we made some really intentional changes to make sure that our organization as a whole was representative of the communities that we were trying to serve. So we've got a much more diverse and representative board of directors. We've got women of color in leadership at our organization. We have bilingual therapists on staff to try to better serve the growing Spanish-speaking community, especially in one of our counties. And we're at the tables talking about these things and trying to be active and proactive about taking an anti-racist lens to what we do. And in parts of our communities, this is new conversation. It's really uncomfortable conversation. And it's important. We have found that aspiring white allies in our work are at these tables intentionally speaking about who is not at the table, making sure that there's representation in all of those places and spaces, and making sure that services are available and accessible in the language that people actually speak and provided by people who look like them and who serve the community, who are of the community. We have had some really fantastic opportunities to talk about what it means to be an aspiring anti-racist in really rural areas of Pennsylvania, and partnered with a number of different local facilitators and folks who have been doing this work for a long time, making sure that we're compensating them appropriately when we do that, and helping to have conversations that most recently we had this fantastic Facebook Live event last week on being color brave, and moving from this idea that color blindness is like the pivotal of where you want to get to a place where we're brave about color and race and conversation. And I think being really purposeful and intentional about, the fact that this is uncomfortable work and it is necessary mission critical work has helped us to grow, and we still have a lot more work to do. But we've also seen that doing this work makes a big difference. So we saw this jump in number of Spanish-speaking clients who came for services in the first couple of years that we had Spanish-speaking therapists on staff. Imagine that. We start talking more about LGBT work in the community, and we're finding that more and more survivors who identify as LGBT are coming through our doors, are asking for groups or wanting to connect with others in the community. And we have this great opportunity to kind of be a connector in our community and really be a voice at the table whenever we have space. So it's using our power, using our privilege to help make the community a safer and more inclusive place.
Awesome. Let's see who wants to go next. That was a lot. Nobody probably wants to go next.
I can jump in. I mean, I echo that. I think we are constantly learning very much the same. I'll speak a little bit about some of the intentional kind of outreach we're doing to reach out to underserved communities more in a kind of a direct service way. We are, much like Ali had mentioned, we've spent the last couple of years creating a language access plan, getting guidance, teaching others in our community, especially law enforcement, that you need a language access plan. Here's how you do it. Let's work on it together, because go figure, many of them do not. And so really, that is like one of the top priorities for us is language access. We're trying to make every training, every virtual event available in whatever language people need. The same with making materials translated into, I feel like we've done, I mean, languages from Spanish, of course, is a big one for us, but also Vietnamese, Korean, you know, I could keep going on and on, but that's really, really important for us. Making sure we have closed captioning available on every Zoom, every support group. Also our website, like we've spent time just thinking about design for those with maybe visual impairments. What font are we using? What lighting is appropriate? Simplified language, those kind of things. Again, we're not where we need to be, but we're certainly trying to make intentional strides to be more accessible. For SAAM specifically, we decided, hey, we should probably do some service and virtual events for male survivors, which often is overlooked, I think, or can be. We are doing one, like I mentioned at the beginning, for women of color and the prevalence that sexual assault is within that community, but also offering psychoeducation specific for adult survivors with disabilities. So we have a whole curriculum and program that we offer to that population. And even more exciting, we are starting a group this month called SOAR. It's a specific support group for Black women who are sexual assault survivors. And so we're doing, you know, we're constantly trying to evolve and meet the need and be educated and informed and humble and approaching this in a way where it's meaningful and we're reaching people that we need to.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes, I just love hearing all of those ideas. This is great. And yes, as you said, closed captioning, I was just talking to our community education director, and yes, we have that available as well when we're doing webinars and online training. So yes, and I'll just add to, I mean, at the YWCA York, our mission, you know, of eliminating racism. So every year we host a Race Against Racism. And so it's a Race Against Racism run to bring awareness to the issues of racism and racial justice. But this year, we are engaged with 3 other YWCA on what is called a racial healing initiative. It's called Unite to Heal. And so just to, again, as the both of you spoke to, you know, just learning, we want to hear from the community. We want to take what you would call like a survey, just to hear what's going on in the community, and then to take steps to, you know, to take action on what we're hearing. So, I mean, we'll also on this journey of just an agency-wide equity plan, and so to engage the staff and also the community. So we've had courageous conversation in the past, and we've learned from that, and we want to continue to learn so that what the services that we're providing, so that the healing that needs to take place can take place in a manner that is that how do I say it, in a manner that is appropriate, that is meeting the community's need when it comes to racism, and also other communities that feel that they are not being served appropriately. So just like Erin and Ali spoke about learning, we continue to do so. We're not where we should be, but we are taking steps in various ways. So that's where we're at right now at the YWCA York.
Awesome. I so appreciate the thoughtfulness and intention that you all are putting into kind of maybe rectifying a past that you wanted to change. So that's awesome. And to hear the collaboration that's going on, whether it's between different economic classes, different racial classes, and then just different abilities or different needs that people are honoring, that's so important, that the services are actually moving towards being accessible and available to all people. And that's what justice is all about, that each person is valued and can receive those same services. That is justice. So that's great to hear. We're getting close to the end of our hour. So what I'm going to ask is for each of you to tell me why you think the SAAM campaign is important and what you hope to see will happen in your community as a result of the SAAM campaign. Start with Erin.
Sure. The SAAM campaign has been, I think, so pivotal in creating discussion, since it started. I think SAAM specific activism maybe has been going on, I think, since the 70s. I could be wrong, and it's helped to facilitate a lot of change, reduce stigma, which is incredible. But we all know there is much work that still needs to be done. I think there's been shifts with conversation, maybe from society and media, which has been wonderful. But again, there's still victim blaming. There's still, people not believing. And so that to me tells me that there is much work to be done, which is okay. We're happy to keep the torch going. I think that in order to make organizational or structural change, spaces that are safe, inclusive for survivors, SAAM is necessary. It's prevention, and it's not just rape crisis centers shouting and saying this is important, but really engaging community members to say, come on board with us, right? We need you. And so much work to be done, but it's encouraging. And I think if we continue on this path of activism, hopefully 20 years, 30 years, the world will look different today.
Amen. Jacardi.
Yes, I really like what Erin said. I am looking, every year, it's that awareness, and I appreciate that. I like that. I love it, actually, because, when you hear people in the community or society as a whole, how they view victims and survivors, I just think that a month where we can focus on education, specific education, and bringing awareness to the community that, this is not okay. And also to victims and survivors that you have rights, know that we support you, know that we hear you. So I think the SAAM campaign does both. It addresses some of the concerns that we have when we hear people talk about victims and survivors in a blaming way, but it also provides the community, the victims and survivors, a chance to hear that we are here, we believe you, we hear you, and we want to take action. We want to do something. And so this year, particularly, when you think about being online and that you might not be safe online, and how many people, how many teens have not been safe and have probably felt that, maybe it's okay, or there's nothing that they can do about that. But when we start talking about it, when we start bringing awareness to it, when we start, educating parents and other adults that, if you see this, it's not okay, here's what you can do. I think that's just, for lack of a better word, great. It's needed. It's important. So.
For sure. Allie?
So I think, one of the things that I hope survivors take away from this conversation, and from the fact that, all of these centers in Pennsylvania, and there's 50 of us covering all the counties. So you do have a local center like one of the ones that is talking today, who's there and who can help you. But I hope what survivors take away from this discussion is that sexual violence is common and healing is possible. So you do not need to feel alone. You do not need to feel like you have to figure this out all by yourself. There are resources and there are support, and there are folks who believe you in your community, and connecting with your local sexual assault program. You're connecting with folks who really believe in this work and believe in your power to heal and to transform after an experience of sexual violence. To our communities, I hope you take away this idea that with all of the centers, we do this work because we don't want to have to do this work. We believe that prevention is possible, and that we can make the changes in our community and in our families, in our schools, in our workplaces, that make it possible that sexual violence is no longer tolerated and the behaviors change, so that no one has to go through this. And if you're not sure how to begin making those changes in your community, you have a center who's nearby to you who wants to help you figure out how to make those changes.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. This was a very empowering conversation. Appreciate you coming and sharing the resources that you all have to offer. Thank you so much for the work that you do in creating safer, caring communities where justice thrives. We look forward, wish you much success in all the events that you have planned this month. If we can highlight them further in any way, please shoot us an email so we can keep it up on our Facebook page and other social media platforms. But thank you so much. We'll be back again next month for another Monday night meetup. Next month, we're going to be talking about therapy with Dr. Sherry Humphreys. So if you are available, please stop in and join us for that. And thank you so much for being with us.